She collapsed on kitchen floor. Son's wrong call reached lonely billionaire, love story. Have you ever wondered if one wrong number could change your entire life? What if the worst moment of your existence became the doorway to everything you'd ever dreamed of? Before we dive into this incredible love story, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your engagement truly means the world and helps us bring you more stories like this one. Now, let me tell you about the day Cleo Carter's world went dark, and how a mistaken phone call connected her to a man who would change everything. It was a Tuesday morning in Charleston when 34-year-old Cleo Carter felt the kitchen floor rise up to meet her face. Or maybe she fell. The distinction didn't matter much when your 7-year-old son was the only one home, and he was frantically scrolling through a phone he barely knew how to use, trying to remember which button called for help. What he didn't know was that his tiny, trembling fingers were about to dial a number that would connect his mother to a man sitting alone in a penthouse 20 blocks away, staring at his phone like it was a weapon instead of a lifeline. This is their story. The thing about falling is that it happens faster than your brain can process. 1 second Cleo was reaching for the cabinet above the stove, trying to find the bottle of ibuprofen that might quiet the pounding in her skull, and the next second her vision was doing that thing again. The sparkly, tunneling thing that meant she'd pushed too hard, worked too long, eaten too little. Her knees buckled. The linoleum was cold against her cheek. That was the last clear thought she had before everything went gray and distant, like someone had wrapped the world in cotton and pushed it far away from her. She could hear Arlo screaming. Her baby. Her 7-year-old son who shouldn't have to see his mama like this, shouldn't have to be scared like this. She wanted to tell him it was okay, that she just needed a minute, that she'd get up and make him breakfast and everything would be fine. But her mouth wouldn't work. Her body wouldn't work. Nothing worked except the small, terrified voice in the back of her mind, whispering that maybe this time she'd finally pushed too far. Mama! Mama! Wake up! Arlo's little hands were on her face, patting her cheeks, his tears falling hot on her skin. She could feel them but couldn't respond, couldn't open her eyes, couldn't do anything except lie there like a broken doll on the kitchen floor of their tiny Charleston apartment. I'm calling 911. Arlo's voice cracked with panic. I'm calling right now. She heard him scramble across the floor, heard the desperate sound of small fingers jabbing at a phone screen. Her phone. The one she'd left charging on the counter because she'd worked a double shift at the hospital last night, and her entire body was one giant bruise of exhaustion. Come on, Arlo was crying, pressing buttons frantically. What Cleo didn't know, couldn't know, was that her 7-year-old son's shaking hands weren't dialing 911. In his panic, he'd opened her recent calls instead of the emergency button. And the last person she'd spoken to at work had been a patient transfer coordinator named Tessa, whose number sat right above the hospital's main line in her call log. Arlo's finger slipped. He pressed the wrong contact entirely. 20 blocks away, in a penthouse apartment that cost more than most people made in 5 years, Thatcher Langford stared at his phone with the same enthusiasm most people reserved for tax audits. He was 38 years old. He had more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. He owned a tech company that had revolutionized healthcare data management and made him a billionaire by 32. He had a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Charleston Harbor, a garage full of cars he rarely drove, and a calendar full of meetings with people who wanted pieces of him. What he didn't have was a single person who'd call him just to talk. His phone was ringing. Unknown number. He should ignore it. Probably another pitch from someone who'd somehow gotten his private number, another investor wanting to discuss opportunities, another person who saw him as a wallet instead of a human being. His finger hovered over the decline button. Then he heard it. A child's voice, high and terrified, sobbing into the phone. Please help. My mama won't wake up. She's on the floor and I don't know what to do. Thatcher's entire body went rigid. Hey, slow down. What's your name? Arlo. The boy gasped between sobs. Cleo Carter. My mama, she just fell down and now she won't open her eyes and I tried to call 911 but I think I pressed the wrong thing and... Arlo, listen to me. Thatcher was already moving, grabbing his keys, his wallet, shoving his feet into shoes. I need you to be very brave right now, okay? Is your mama breathing? I think so. Her chest is moving. But she won't wake up. That's good. That means she's okay, she just needs help. Can you tell me your address? Arlo recited it through his tears, an address Thatcher recognized as one of the older apartment complexes near the medical district. Not the worst neighborhood, but not great either. The kind of place where people worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. I'm coming right now, Thatcher said, his voice steady even though his heart was hammering. I'm going to stay on the phone with you until I get there, and then we're going to help your mama together. Can you do that? Yes, Arlo whispered. Good boy. Now, I'm also going to have someone else call 911 for us, okay? But I'm not hanging up. I'm staying right here with you. Thatcher was in his car, phone on speaker, already calling 911 on his smartwatch as he peeled out of the parking garage. He gave the dispatcher the address, explained the situation, then went right back to talking to Arlo in that same calm, steady voice he'd once used to talk his mother through her cancer treatments. The voice that said everything would be okay, even when he wasn't sure it would be. What's your mama's name, Arlo? Cleo. Cleo Carter. She's a nurse. She works really hard. She worked all night and she was so tired this morning, but she still made me breakfast and, his voice broke again. Is she going to die? No, Thatcher said firmly, running a red light because some things mattered more than traffic laws. She's not going to die. We're going to make sure of that. I'm 5 minutes away now. He had no idea why he was doing this. A stranger's child, a wrong number, a woman he'd never met lying unconscious in an apartment he'd never seen. He should have just called 911 and gone about his day. But something in that little boy's voice had cracked open a part of Thatcher's chest that had been sealed shut for 4 years. Ever since his mother died, since his marriage fell apart, since he'd decided that caring about people hurt too much and it was easier to just stop trying. I can hear the sirens, Arlo said, hope flooding his voice. That's them coming to help. I'm pulling up right now too. Which apartment number? 3B. Thatcher abandoned his car in a loading zone and took the stairs 2 at a time. The building was old, the hallway carpet worn thin, the paint peeling in places. He found 3B and knocked hard. Arlo. It's me, the man on the phone. Can you open the door? The door cracked open, and Thatcher found himself looking down at a little boy with tear-streaked brown cheeks and his mother's eyes, wide and terrified and trying so hard to be brave. She's in the kitchen, Arlo whispered. Thatcher stepped inside just as the paramedics arrived behind him. The apartment was small but clean, everything neat despite its obvious age. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. A basket of laundry sat folded by the couch. This was a home, not just a place to live. And on the kitchen floor, still unconscious, lay the most beautiful woman Thatcher had ever seen. She was black, with natural curls pulled back in a ponytail, wearing scrubs that had seen better days. Even unconscious, even with exhaustion written in every line of her face, there was something about her that made Thatcher's breath catch. The paramedics moved in, professional and quick, checking vitals and asking Arlo questions the boy tried his best to answer. Thatcher found himself kneeling beside the little boy, one hand on his shoulder, anchoring him while strangers worked on his mother. She's stable, one paramedic said. Looks like severe exhaustion and dehydration. We need to transport her, let the doctors run some tests. I'm going with her, Arlo said immediately. Of course you are, Thatcher said. And so am I, if that's okay. He had no idea why he said it. He had a board meeting in an hour. He had 12 emails that needed responses. He had a life that didn't include wrong numbers and unconscious nurses and terrified 7-year-olds. But when Arlo looked up at him with those big, hopeful eyes and whispered, "Really?" Thatcher couldn't imagine being anywhere else. "Really," he said. And just like that, everything changed. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. Thatcher sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair with Arlo pressed against his side, the little boy's hand gripping his like a lifeline. They'd been there for 2 hours. 2 hours of watching Arlo try not to cry, of making small talk about superheroes in school, of pretending Thatcher knew what he was doing. He didn't know what he was doing. Mr. Langford? A doctor appeared in scrubs, her expression professionally neutral. You're here with Ms. Carter? Thatcher stood, keeping Arlo's hand in his. Yes. How is she? She's awake and stable. Severe dehydration and exhaustion, as we suspected. Her electrolytes were dangerously low, and she's malnourished. When's the last time she ate a full meal? Arlo's voice was small. She gave me her dinner last night. Said she wasn't hungry. The doctor's expression softened. She's going to be okay, sweetheart. But she needs to rest. No work for at least a week, and she needs to eat properly and stay hydrated. She looked at Thatcher. Are you family? I'm. Thatcher paused. What was he? A stranger who'd answered a wrong number? A friend. I'm here to help however I can. She's asking for her son. You can both go back, but keep it brief. She needs rest. Arlo was already moving, pulling Thatcher along behind him. They found Cleo in a curtained-off area, hooked up to an 4, looking small and fragile in the hospital bed. But her eyes were open, and when she saw Arlo, she started crying. Baby, come here. Arlo climbed onto the bed carefully, burying his face in her neck. Cleo wrapped her arms around him, and Thatcher felt something twist painfully in his chest at the sight of it. This fierce, desperate love between mother and child. I'm sorry, Mama. I tried to call 911 but I messed up and called the wrong person, but then he came anyway and he helped and… Shoo, baby, it's okay. Cleo's eyes lifted over Arlo's head and found Thatcher standing awkwardly by the curtain. You're the man who answered? Thatcher Langford. He stepped closer, hands in his pockets because he didn't know what else to do with them. Your son is very brave. He shouldn't have had to be. Her voice was hoarse, thick with tears and shame. I'm so sorry you got dragged into this. Thank you for coming, for helping him. I don't know how to repay. You don't, Thatcher interrupted gently. There's nothing to repay. I'm just glad we got to you in time. Cleo studied him with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. He could see her taking in his expensive watch, his tailored clothes, the quality of his shoes. Could see her doing the math and coming to conclusions about who he was and what he must think of her. You don't have to stay, she said quietly. We'll be fine. The doctor said you can't work for a week. I'll figure it out. Cleo. Ms. Carter, she corrected, her chin lifting despite her weakness. And I appreciate everything you've done, Mr. Langford, but we don't need charity. There it was. The pride he'd expected, the walls going up even though she was lying in a hospital bed because she'd literally worked herself unconscious. Thatcher recognized it because he'd built similar walls around himself. But something about this woman and her son had gotten under his skin in the past 2 hours. Maybe it was the way Arlo had trusted him instantly. Maybe it was the children's drawings on her refrigerator, the folded laundry, the evidence of a woman who was drowning but still trying to keep her head above water for her child. Maybe it was just that he was so damn tired of being alone. What if it's not charity, he asked. Then what is it? Help. From someone who understands what it's like to lose everything and have to rebuild. He pulled a chair closer to the bed, sitting so he was at her eye level instead of looming over her. My mother died of cancer 4 years ago. I watched her work herself to death trying to pay for treatments, trying to keep everything together. I was already successful by then, had money to help, but she had the same pride you do. Wouldn't take a dime. Cleo's expression shifted, something raw flickering across her face. I'm sorry about your mother. I'm sorry you're in this position. I'm sorry your son had to be scared like that. And I'm sorry if this sounds presumptuous, but… He glanced at Arlo, who was listening intently. What if I could help? Not charity. Just one human being helping another. Why? The question was direct, challenging. You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Because 4 years ago, when my mother was dying and my marriage was falling apart, I wished someone had stepped in. Someone who could have helped without making it feel like pity. He met her eyes steadily. Because that little boy reminded me what it feels like to care about something more than quarterly reports and board meetings. You're rich. It wasn't a question. Yes. Very rich. Very rich, he confirmed. And you just happened to answer when my son called? He called the wrong number. I was the wrong number. Thatcher smiled faintly. Or maybe I was exactly the right one. Cleo closed her eyes, her hand stroking Arlo's back in slow, soothing circles. When she opened them again, they were wet. I can't work for a week. My rent is due in 10 days. I have $73 in my checking account and a maxed-out credit card. My car needs an oil change I can't afford. Arlo needs new shoes because he's growing like a weed. I don't have family. My mama died 2 years ago, heart attack, and my father. She shook her head. He's not in the picture. My ex-husband hasn't paid child support in 4 years. I'm barely keeping us afloat as it is. The honesty was brutal, laid out like items on a ledger. Thatcher appreciated it more than she knew. Let me help, he said simply. How? Your rent, for starters. Consider it paid. Food, utilities, whatever Arlo needs. And I have connections at every hospital in Charleston. I'll make sure you're approved for the week off with pay, medical necessity. You can't just. I can, actually. That's what having too much money is good for. Using it for something that actually matters. Cleo stared at him for a long moment. He could see her fighting herself, pride warring with desperation, maternal instinct warring with independence. Finally, she said, "Why would you do this for strangers?" "Because I don't want to be the kind of person who ignores a child crying for help. And because," he paused, then decided on honesty to match hers. "Because I'm 38 years old, I have more money than I know what to do with, and I can't remember the last time I did something that actually mattered. Let me help. Please." Something in her face cracked, just slightly. "I can't promise I'll be able to pay you back. I'm not asking you to. This doesn't mean," she gestured vaguely between them. "I'm not looking for anything. A relationship, or whatever." "Neither am I," Thatcher lied, because the truth was too complicated. The truth was that he'd felt more alive in the past 2 hours than he had in 4 years, and he had no idea what to do with that information. Cleo looked at her son, then back at Thatcher. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Thank you." Arlo's face split into a grin, and Thatcher felt that painful twist in his chest again. He'd made this child smile. When was the last time he'd made anyone smile? "There's one condition," Cleo added. "Name it. You let me cook you dinner. Once I'm back on my feet. It's not payment, it's just, I need to do something. To say thank you properly." Thatcher smiled. Deal. He had no idea that dinner would change everything. Had no idea that the woman looking at him with exhausted gratitude and stubborn pride would become the most important person in his world. All he knew was that for the first time in 4 years, he was looking forward to something. And that felt like a miracle all by itself. Thatcher kept his promise. All of them. By the time Cleo was discharged from the hospital that evening, her rent had been paid for 3 months in advance. Her landlord had called, confused but confirming. Her utilities were current. A grocery delivery service had stocked her refrigerator and pantry with actual food, not ramen and canned soup, but fresh vegetables, quality proteins, the kind of groceries she'd stopped being able to afford years ago. And Arlo had new shoes. Light-up ones that made him jump around the apartment squealing with joy. "You didn't have to do this much," Cleo said when Thatcher called to check on them that night. She was sitting on her couch, exhausted but clean and fed, watching Arlo play with his new shoes like they were made of gold. "I know." Thatcher's voice was warm through the phone, and Cleo found herself relaxing despite her instinct to keep walls up. "But I wanted to. How are you feeling?" Like I got hit by a truck, but better. The 4 helped. The food helped more. She paused. Arlo won't stop talking about you. You're his new favorite person. He's a great kid. You've done an amazing job with him. The compliment hit harder than it should have. When was the last time someone had acknowledged how hard she was working? How much she was sacrificing? Cleo felt her throat tighten. Thank you, she managed. For everything. I still don't understand why you're doing this, but, thank you. You will, Thatcher said cryptically. Understand, I mean. Eventually. 3 days later, Thatcher showed up at her apartment with takeout from a restaurant Cleo had never been able to afford and a chess set for Arlo, who'd mentioned loving strategy games during their hospital wait. You're spoiling him, Cleo said, but she was smiling as she said it, standing in her doorway in yoga pants and an old t-shirt, her natural hair loose around her shoulders. Thatcher tried very hard not to stare. She was even more beautiful rested, with color back in her cheeks and that sharp intelligence dancing in her eyes. Is that against the rules? Probably should be. She stepped aside to let him in. Come on. Arlo will lose his mind when he sees you. Arlo did, in fact, lose his mind. Within minutes, he and Thatcher were on the floor setting up the chessboard, Thatcher explaining strategies in a patient, gentle voice that made Cleo's chest ache with feelings she wasn't ready to name. She watched them from the kitchen while unpacking the food, real Thai food, the kind with fresh herbs and actual flavor. Watched Thatcher laugh at something Arlo said. Watched her son's face light up with the kind of joy that came from positive male attention he'd been missing for 4 years. And she felt something shift inside her. Something dangerous. Don't, she warned herself. Don't start hoping. Don't start imagining. He's being kind, that's all. Rich people do charity sometimes. It doesn't mean anything more than that. But when Thatcher looked up and caught her watching, and his whole face softened with something warm and real, her warning felt flimsy. Breakable. Your mama's staring at us, Thatcher Stage whispered to Arlo. Should we be concerned? She's probably making sure you're not teaching me bad chess moves, Arlo whispered back, giggling. Hey, I can hear you both. Cleo called, fighting a smile. That was the plan, Thatcher said and winked. They ate dinner together, the 3 of them crowded around her small kitchen table, and it felt so natural. Cleo had to keep reminding herself this wasn't real. This wasn't her life. This was a temporary kindness from a stranger who'd gotten pulled into their chaos by accident. Except Thatcher didn't feel like a stranger anymore. After Arlo went to bed, after 3 more chess games and 2 stories read in Thatcher's deep, soothing voice, Thatcher and Cleo found themselves alone in her living room, nursing cups of tea like civilized adults instead of 2 people dancing around an attraction that was getting harder to ignore. I should go, Thatcher said, making no move to leave. Probably, Cleo agreed, making no move to show him out. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Cleo asked the question that had been burning in her mind for 3 days. Why haven't you asked me anything about myself? Most people would be interrogating me by now, trying to figure out if I'm worth the investment. Thatcher set his tea down and turned to face her fully. In the soft lamplight of her living room, he looked younger than 38. Vulnerable in a way she suspected he rarely allowed himself to be. Because I don't care about your resume or your story or whether you check boxes that make you worthy of help, he said quietly. I care that Arlo called me instead of 911, and somehow that wrong number felt like the most right thing that's happened to me in years. I care that you work yourself unconscious to take care of your son. I care that you have drawings on your refrigerator and folded laundry, and you make breakfast even when you're exhausted. He paused. I care that when you look at me, you don't see a wallet. You see a man. Cleo's breath caught. Thatcher. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I just wanted you to know why I'm here. Why I keep showing up. It's not charity, Cleo. It's selfish. Being around you and Arlo makes me feel human again. The honesty was devastating. Cleo found herself leaning forward without meaning to, drawn by something she couldn't name and didn't want to resist. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "How to accept help without feeling like I'm losing myself. How to let someone in when the last person I let in destroyed me." "We don't have to figure it out tonight." Thatcher's hand moved to cover hers where it rested on the couch between them. His palm was warm, his fingers gentle. "We don't have to figure anything out at all, if you don't want to." But Cleo did want to. That was the terrifying part. She wanted to figure out this man with his sad eyes and generous heart, wanted to understand why his presence felt like coming home, wanted to explore this pull between them that had nothing to do with his money, and everything to do with the way he looked at her son like Arlo mattered. The way he looked at her like she mattered. "Stay," she heard herself say. "Just a little longer. Tell me about you. Your life, your company, why you were home on a Tuesday morning to answer a random call." Thatcher's smile was sad and beautiful. "That's a long story. I've got time." So he told her. About building his company from nothing, about the isolation that came with success, about his mother's cancer and how he'd thrown himself into work to avoid the grief. About his marriage ending because his ex-wife wanted the lifestyle but not the man, wanted the money but not the mess of his emotions. About waking up one day and realizing he had everything except a reason to care about any of it. "Until a 7-year-old called me crying," he finished softly. "And suddenly I remembered what it felt like to be needed for something real." Cleo was crying. She didn't know when she'd started, but tears were sliding down her cheeks, and Thatcher was wiping them away with his thumb, and the gesture was so tender it hurt. "I'm a mess," she whispered. "I'm broke and exhausted and barely holding my life together. I have a 7-year-old who depends on me and an ex-husband who's never coming back and a dead mother I still talk to sometimes even though I know she can't hear me. I work too much because I have to, not because I want to. I can't offer you anything close to what you deserve." "You're offering me honesty," Thatcher said. "That's more than most people in my life have given me in years." They stared at each other, the air between them charged with possibility and fear in equal measure. Cleo knew she should pull away, should thank him for the evening and send him home, should protect her heart before it got any more invested in this beautiful, broken man who'd appeared in her life like some kind of miracle. But instead, she leaned closer. And Thatcher met her halfway. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question more than a statement. His lips were warm against hers, gentle in a way that suggested he understood how fragile this moment was, how easily it could shatter if pushed too hard. When they pulled apart, Cleo was shaking. "That probably wasn't smart," she breathed. "Probably not," Thatcher agreed. But he was smiling, and so was she, and suddenly smart didn't seem nearly as important as real. "I should still make you that dinner," Cleo said. "The thank you one. I'd like that. This coming weekend? If you're free. I'll make myself free." Thatcher left shortly after, but the warmth of his kiss lingered on Cleo's lips long into the night. She lay in bed staring at her ceiling, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure, wondering how her life had gone from falling apart on a kitchen floor to kissing a billionaire on her couch in the span of 3 days. It felt like a dream. The kind you didn't want to wake up from, even though you knew you probably should before reality came crashing in. But maybe, just maybe, this dream was real. And maybe that was the most terrifying possibility of all. That weekend, Cleo cooked. She'd been planning the menu all week, determined to make something special despite her limited kitchen and even more limited skills. Nothing fancy, she wasn't trying to impress him with technique. But she could make her mama's recipe for smothered chicken, the one that had taken her years to get right, the one that tasted like home and love and Sunday dinners before everything fell apart. Arlo helped, standing on a step stool by the stove, carefully stirring the gravy while Cleo seasoned the chicken. They'd cleaned the apartment until it shined, put out the nice dishes she saved for occasions that never came, even bought flowers from the grocery store, daisies that now sat cheerfully in a mason jar on the table. "Is Mr. Thatcher your boyfriend now?" Arlo asked casually, like he was asking about the weather. Cleo nearly dropped the chicken. "What?" No. Why would you think that? Because you smile different when you talk about him. And you put on lip gloss. Arlo gave her a knowing look that was far too wise for 7 years old. You never wear lip gloss unless it's church or something special. Cleo touched her lips self-consciously. She had put on lip gloss. And mascara. And her good jeans instead of her worn-out ones. We're friends, baby. He's been very kind to us. Aha. Arlo didn't sound convinced. But you like him, right? Like him. How did you explain adult feelings to a child? How did you say that yes, she liked Thatcher in that terrifying, exhilarating way that made her stomach flip and her heart race, but that she was also scared of what that meant, scared of being hurt again, scared of letting someone close enough to destroy her? I like him, Cleo admitted carefully. But it's complicated, Arlo. Grown-up feelings usually are. Not that complicated, Arlo said with the confidence of someone who'd never had his heart broken. He likes you too. I can tell. He looks at you the way Prince Eric looks at Ariel in that movie. You've been watching too many Disney movies. Maybe you haven't watched enough. Cleo laughed despite herself, pressing a kiss to the top of her son's head. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't always notice because you're busy being a mama. The doorbell rang before Cleo could formulate a response to that devastating piece of honesty. She took a breath, smoothed her hair, told herself to calm down. It was just dinner, just a thank you, nothing more. Except when she opened the door and saw Thatcher standing there in dark jeans and a soft gray sweater that made his eyes look like storm clouds, holding a bouquet of roses and a bottle of wine, her heart did that stupid flipping thing again. Hi, he said, and smiled at her like she was the only thing in the world worth looking at. Hi, she managed back. These are for you. He handed her the roses, real, long-stemmed roses, not grocery store daisies. The kind that cost money and came wrapped in elegant paper. And this is for dinner. I didn't know what you were making, so I went with a versatile red. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He stepped inside, and immediately Arlo was there, grabbing his hand, pulling him toward the kitchen to show off his stirring skills. Dinner was perfect. The chicken was tender, the gravy rich, the rice fluffy. They ate at Cleo's small table, and Thatcher praised every bite like it was a 5-star meal, and maybe it was the wine or maybe it was the way the evening light came through her windows, but Cleo felt beautiful. Scene. After Arlo went to bed, after more chess and another story, after Thatcher tucked him in like it was the most natural thing in the world, they found themselves on her couch again, closer than last time, the space between them charged with want and uncertainty. Thank you for dinner, Thatcher said softly. That was incredible. Your mother's recipe. How did you know? Because you touched the pot 3 times while it was cooking, like you were checking in with her. Making sure you got it right. Cleo's throat tightened. I miss her. Every single day. She died so fast. Heart attack, just gone. One day she was telling me about her garden, the next day I was planning her funeral. I'm sorry. Thatcher's hand found hers. My mother's death was slow. Cancer. I watched her fade for 18 months. Sometimes I still don't know which is worse, sudden or slow. Both feel like someone ripped out a piece of your soul. How do you keep going? The question was barely a whisper. You find new reasons. His thumb stroked across her knuckles. New people who make you remember why living matters. The air shifted. Cleo was acutely aware of every point of contact between them, his hand on hers, his thigh against hers, the way his breathing had changed to match hers. Thatcher, she said, and then forgot what she was going to say because he was leaning in, giving her time to pull away, to stop this before it went further. She didn't pull away. This kiss was different from the first. Deeper, more certain, full of all the things they weren't saying out loud. Cleo's hands found their way to his hair, his arms wrapped around her waist, and for the first time in 4 years, she let herself feel wanted. Desired. Cherished. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard. Thatcher pressed his forehead to hers. "I don't want to rush this," he said. "I don't want to mess it up by moving too fast." "Neither do I. But I also don't want to pretend I'm not completely falling for you, Cleo Carter. Because I am. Have been since the moment I saw you on that kitchen floor and thought you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, even unconscious and exhausted." Cleo laughed, the sound watery with tears she didn't know she was crying. "That's a weird thing to find beautiful. Everything about you is beautiful. Your strength, your pride, the way you love your son. The way you talk to your mother when you cook. The way you're terrified right now but kissing me anyway." He cupped her face in his hands. "I know you've been hurt. I know you have every reason not to trust this. But I'm asking you to try. To give us a chance." "What are we doing?" Cleo whispered. "You're you, and you're you. That's all I want you to be. Your world and my world are so different, Thatcher. I don't fit in penthouses and boardrooms. I don't know how to be with someone who has the kind of money you do. What if we just take it one day at a time?" he interrupted gently. "What if we don't worry about worlds and money and fitting in, and just see where this goes? No pressure. No expectations. Just us." It sounded too simple. Too easy. Life wasn't simple or easy, especially not for single mothers with dead ex-husbands and broken bank accounts. But looking into Thatcher's eyes, seeing the vulnerability and hope there, Cleo wanted to believe. Wanted to take the risk. Wanted to fall into this beautiful, terrifying thing growing between them. "Okay," she breathed. "One day at a time." His smile was like sunrise. "Yeah. Yeah." They kissed again, softer this time, sealing the promise they'd just made. And when Thatcher left that night, they both knew everything had changed. This wasn't pretend anymore. Wasn't charity or gratitude or wrong numbers that turned out right. This was real. Messy and complicated and absolutely, terrifyingly real. And for the first time in years, both of them were willing to risk their hearts on something that felt like it might actually be worth it. The next 3 weeks felt like living in a dream Cleo kept waiting to wake up from. Thatcher became a constant presence in their lives. Not overwhelming, not intrusive, just there. In the best possible way. He showed up for Arlo's school play with flowers. He brought coffee to Cleo's apartment on his way to work when he knew she had early shifts. He taught Arlo to ride a bike in the park, running alongside the little boy until he found his balance, cheering louder than anyone when Arlo finally rode on his own. He integrated himself into their life like he'd always been there, filling spaces Cleo hadn't realized were empty. They went on real dates. Dinner at restaurants where Cleo felt self-conscious about the prices until Thatcher would reach across the table, take her hand, and remind her that money was just money. What mattered was the conversation, the laughter, the way they could talk for hours and never run out of things to say. They walked along Charleston's waterfront at sunset, Thatcher's hand warm in hers, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up middle class, about the scholarship that got him into college, about building his company in a garage with nothing but determination and code. She told him about nursing school, about meeting her ex-husband and thinking he was her forever, about the devastation when he left and never looked back. "His loss," Thatcher said fiercely when she finished that story. "His enormous, idiotic loss. You're biased." "Absolutely. Doesn't make it less true." They'd been seeing each other for 3 weeks when Thatcher invited her to his penthouse for the first time. Arlo was spending the night at Odessa's, Cleo's best friend who'd finally been introduced to Thatcher and given her enthusiastic approval, and Cleo found herself alone with Thatcher in a space that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Modern furniture that probably cost more than her car. Art on the walls that might have been originals. A kitchen bigger than her entire apartment. "This is where you live?" Cleo breathed, turning in a slow circle. "This is where I exist," Thatcher corrected. "I didn't really live anywhere until I met you." He'd made dinner, actually cooked, which surprised her until she realized of course he could cook. He'd probably had every lesson money could buy. The food was good, but what made it perfect was the way they ate on his balcony overlooking the harbor, the way the city lights reflected in the water below, the way Thatcher looked at her like she was more valuable than every expensive thing in his home combined. After dinner, he gave her a tour. The guest rooms he never had guests in. The home office where he worked too late most nights. The master bedroom with its massive bed and view that made Cleo's breath catch. "You can see the whole city from here," she whispered. "I usually don't notice." Thatcher stood behind her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "I'm noticing tonight, though. Seeing it through your eyes makes it different. Better." Cleo turned in his arms, tilted her head back to look at him. They'd kissed plenty over the past few weeks. Soft kisses, sweet kisses, the kind that promised more but didn't push. But standing in his bedroom with the city spread out below them, something shifted. "Thatcher," she said softly, "tell me what you're thinking." His hands moved to her waist, holding her like she was precious. "Tell me what you want." "I want," she paused, searching for courage. "I want to stop being afraid. I want to stop waiting for this to go wrong. I want to just feel. Then feel." He kissed her forehead, her temple, the corner of her mouth. "I'm not going anywhere, Cleo. I'm right here. I'm not him. I won't leave." The kiss that followed wasn't gentle. It was hungry, desperate, full of 3 weeks of wanting and holding back. Cleo's hands fisted in Thatcher's shirt, pulling him closer, needing him closer. His hands tangled in her hair, tilted her head to deepen the kiss, and she made a sound she didn't recognize. Need and surrender mixed together. They made it to the bed somehow, a tangle of limbs and discarded clothing, and when Thatcher paused to ask if she was sure, Cleo pulled him down to her and showed him exactly how sure she was. Later, wrapped in expensive sheets with Thatcher's arm around her and her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow, Cleo felt something slot into place. Something that had been broken and scattered for 4 years suddenly felt whole again. "I'm falling in love with you," she whispered into the darkness, thinking maybe he was asleep, maybe he wouldn't hear. But his arm tightened around her, and his voice was rough with emotion when he answered. "I'm already there. Have been for weeks. I was just waiting for you to catch up." Cleo lifted her head to look at him, and the vulnerability in his face made her chest ache. This beautiful, wealthy, powerful man looking at her like she held his entire world in her hands. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Me too." He traced her cheekbone with his thumb. "But I'm more scared of not having this. Not having you. So I'm choosing the fear that comes with loving you over the fear of being alone." "That's a very romantic way of saying you're terrified." "I contain multitudes." His smile was soft, intimate, meant just for her. "Stay tonight. Wake up with me tomorrow. Let me make you breakfast and pretend for a morning that this is our normal. I have to pick up Arlo by 10. Then we have until 9:30. Cleo settled back against his chest, her fingers tracing patterns on his skin. "Okay. One night of pretending this is normal." Except it didn't feel like pretending anymore. It felt like the start of something real, something that might actually last. And as she drifted off to sleep in Thatcher Langford's arms, in his penthouse overlooking Charleston harbor, Cleo let herself believe, just for tonight, that maybe she deserved this kind of happiness. That maybe, against all odds, she'd found her person in a wrong number and a kitchen floor and a little boy's desperate cry for help. That maybe love really could find you when you least expected it and needed it most. The next morning, she woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and Thatcher watching her with soft eyes, and it still didn't feel real. But it felt right. And sometimes, that was enough. Everything was perfect for exactly 2 more weeks. Then reality came knocking in the form of Thatcher's business partner, Hayes Merrick. Hayes was 39, successful, and deeply skeptical of anything that disrupted the carefully controlled world he and Thatcher had built. When Thatcher started leaving work early, turning down evening meetings, and smiling at his phone like a teenager, Hayes noticed. "We need to talk," Hayes said. walking into Thatcher's office without knocking one Thursday afternoon in early July. "About your new situation." Thatcher looked up from his computer, where he'd been pretending to review quarterly reports while actually texting Cleo about dinner plans. "My relationship, you mean? You can say the word." "Fine. Your relationship." Hayes sat down uninvited, his expression concerned rather than hostile. "Look, I'm happy you're happy. Really. You've been miserable for years. But nothing." Thatcher's voice went cold. "Whatever you're about to say, don't. She's a nurse with a kid and an ex-husband who doesn't pay child support. You've known her for less than 2 months, and you're already rearranging your entire life around her. People are going to talk, Thatch. They're going to say she's after your money. Let them talk. Think about what happened with Melissa." Hayes leaned forward. "Your ex-wife took you for millions in the divorce. You swore you'd never let someone use you for your money again. And now, Cleo is nothing like Melissa." Thatcher's jaw was tight with anger. "Nothing. How do you know? You met her when she was literally at rock bottom, desperate enough to accept help from a stranger. How do you know she's not just a better actress?" The words hung in the air like poison. Thatcher wanted to throw Hayes out of his office, wanted to defend Cleo with every fiber of his being. But a small, insidious voice in the back of his mind whispered, "What if he's right? What if you're being played again?" "Get out," Thatcher said quietly. "Thatch, get out of my office. Now." Hayes left, but the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted, and Thatcher hated himself for even letting it take root. But he couldn't help thinking about how quickly things had progressed, how easily he'd opened his wallet, how Cleo had been on the verge of losing everything when they met. He didn't believe she was using him. He couldn't believe it. But the fear was there now, whispering in the quiet moments. That same evening, Cleo got a reality check of her own in the form of a patient at the hospital, a woman who recognized Thatcher's name when Cleo mentioned him to Odessa during a break. "Thatcher Langford?" The woman's eyes went wide. "Girl, he's worth like $2 billion. You're dating that Thatcher Langford." Cleo's stomach dropped. "I knew he had money, but not billionaire money." The woman whistled. "Honey, you better hope you've got a prenup lined up, because his people are going to come for you hard. Women like us don't end up with men like him without everyone assuming we're gold diggers." The words hit like a slap. Cleo had known Thatcher was wealthy. You couldn't miss it in the penthouse, the cars, the ease with which he spent money. But somehow her brain had classified him as rich, not $2 billion rich. Not completely different universe rich. That night, when Thatcher came over for dinner as planned, something was off. They both felt it. The easy comfort that had defined their relationship suddenly felt fragile, loaded with unspoken concerns. "Everything okay?" Cleo asked as they cleaned up after putting Arlo to bed. "Yeah, fine." Thatcher's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just a long day." "You're lying." He sighed, setting down the dish he'd been drying. "Hayes said some things today. About us. About the timing of when we met and how fast we've moved." Cleo's chest tightened. "What kind of things?" "It doesn't matter." "It matters if it's bothering you enough to lie about being fine." They stared at each other across her small kitchen, and Cleo could feel the distance opening between them like a chasm. All the insecurities she'd been pushing down came rushing back. "He thinks I'm using you for money," she said flatly. It wasn't a question. Thatcher's silence was answer enough. "And you're wondering if he's right." Her voice was steady, but inside she was breaking. "You're wondering if I'm just a better actress than your ex-wife." "No. Cleo, no. Don't." She held up a hand. "Don't lie to me. I can see it in your face. The doubt." "I don't doubt you," Thatcher said desperately, stepping toward her. "I don't doubt what we have. I've been burned before, and Hayes got in my head, and And I found out today that you're worth $2 billion. The number felt obscene in her mouth. 2 billion, Thatcher. Do you know how insane that is? Do you know how impossible it is for me to ever prove I'm not with you for that money? You don't have to prove anything. Yes, I do. Tears were streaming down her face now. To your friends, your business partners, probably your family if you have any. To everyone who's going to look at me and see a poor nurse who trapped a billionaire. And the worst part is, I can't even blame them for thinking it, because from the outside, that's exactly what this looks like. Thatcher reached for her, but she stepped back. The hurt on his face was devastating, but she couldn't comfort him right now. Not when her entire world was tilting sideways. Maybe we moved too fast, she whispered. Maybe we should slow down. Take some space to think about what we're really doing. I don't want space. I want you. But do you trust me? Really trust me? Because if there's even a small part of you that wonders if I'm using you, if I'm playing some long game, then this isn't going to work. I can't build a relationship on doubt. Cleo. I think you should go. The words were knives. Thatcher looked like she'd physically struck him. Don't do this. Don't push me away because you're scared. I'm not scared. I'm realistic. She wrapped her arms around herself, a barrier against the pain. This was always going to be complicated. We just chose to ignore how complicated until it got too real. Thatcher stood there for a long moment, clearly wanting to fight, to argue, to fix this. But finally, he nodded. Okay. If you need space, I'll give you space. But Cleo. He waited until she looked at him. I love you. That's real. Whatever doubts Hayes put in my head, whatever fears you have about our situation, my love for you is real. I need you to believe that. I want to, she whispered. I really want to. He left after kissing her forehead, gentle and sad and final feeling. Cleo stood in her kitchen for a long time after his footsteps faded, staring at nothing, wondering how something that had felt so right 2 weeks ago could suddenly feel so impossible. She'd known it was too good to be true. Fairy tales didn't happen to women like her. Billionaires didn't fall in love with broke single mothers and stay in love when reality hit. But knowing it and feeling it were two different things, and the feeling was destroying her. In his car, Thatcher sat gripping the steering wheel, Hayes's words and Cleo's tears warring in his mind. He loved her. He knew he loved her. But the fear was there, whispering that he was being a fool again, that he'd learned nothing from Melissa, that he was setting himself up for another expensive heartbreak. He hated that he even had these thoughts. Hated that money had poisoned something pure. Hated that the world wouldn't just let them be happy. Both of them went to bed alone that night, miserable and confused, wondering if love was ever really enough to bridge the gap between two completely different worlds. The week that followed was agony. Thatcher threw himself into work, using board meetings and conference calls as distractions from the Cleo-shaped hole in his chest. He didn't call, didn't text. Gave her the space she'd asked for even though every cell in his body was screaming to go to her apartment, to fix this, to make her understand that his momentary doubt meant nothing compared to how much he loved her. But doubt had consequences. He knew that. And maybe she was right to pull back, to protect herself from a man who couldn't fully trust her even when she'd given him no reason not to. Hayes noticed the change immediately. You look terrible. Thanks. Thatcher didn't look up from his laptop. I'm sorry. About what I said. I was trying to protect you, but I think I just ruined the best thing that's happened to me in years. Thatcher's voice was bitter. Yeah, you did. If she really loves you, she'll come back. And if I really loved her, I wouldn't have let doubt in for even a second. Thatcher finally looked at Hayes. You were wrong about her. She's not Melissa. She never was. And I was an idiot for letting your paranoia infect what we had. So fix it. She asked for space. I'm giving it to her. That's not fixing it. That's being a coward. The words hit hard because they were true. Thatcher was being a coward. He was letting Cleo pull away instead of fighting for her, instead of proving that his love was bigger than his fear, bigger than his bank account, bigger than anything the world threw at them. Meanwhile, Cleo was barely holding it together. She worked her shifts at the hospital like a zombie, going through the motions without really being present. Arlo kept asking about Thatcher, kept wondering when Mr. Thatcher was coming over for dinner again, kept wanting to show him the new chess moves he'd been practicing. "He's busy with work, baby," Cleo said, the lie tasting like ash. "But he said he'd teach me the Queen's Gambit. He promised." Promises. God, they'd made so many promises to each other in those perfect weeks. Promises that felt fragile now, built on a foundation that couldn't support the weight of reality. Odessa found her crying in the hospital supply closet on Thursday, a week after the fight. "Okay, that's it. Talk to me." "There's nothing to talk about. Bull. You're in love with that man, and he's in love with you, and you're both being idiots about it. It's not that simple, Dessa. Love is never simple. But it's worth fighting for." Odessa sat down beside her on the floor, shoulder to shoulder. "What's really going on?" So Cleo told her everything. The doubt, the money, the impossible situation of loving someone from a completely different world. The fear that she'd always be seen as a gold digger, that Arlo would grow attached only to have it all fall apart, that she was setting herself up for the kind of heartbreak she might not survive. "You know what I hear?" Odessa said when she finished. "Fear. Just fear. Not actual problems, not real reasons to walk away. Just fear of what might happen. That's not." "Yes, it is. You're so used to things going wrong that you're sabotaging something good before it has a chance to disappoint you." Odessa took Cleo's hand. "Your ex walked out. Your mama died. You've been alone and struggling for so long that you don't know how to accept it when someone wants to make your life easier. But Cleo, that man loves you. I saw it. Arlo sees it. Everyone sees it except, apparently, you. What if Hayes is right? What if Thatcher starts to resent me for needing help? What if the money always hangs between us? What if it doesn't? What if you're throwing away your chance at real happiness because you're too scared to believe you deserve it?" The words hit like truth tends to, hard and painful and impossible to ignore. That night, after Arlo was asleep, Cleo sat in her living room staring at her phone. She'd opened Thatcher's contact a dozen times in the past week, typed and deleted messages, hovered over the call button without pressing it. She missed him. God, she missed him so much it physically hurt. Missed his laugh, his gentle hands, the way he looked at Arlo like he hung the moon. Missed feeling safe and seen and loved in a way she'd thought she'd never feel again. But missing him didn't fix the fundamental problem. He'd doubted her. And she'd doubted them. And now they were stuck in this horrible limbo where neither of them knew how to bridge the gap. At the exact same moment, 20 blocks away, Thatcher made a decision. Space was fine. Doubt was understandable. But giving up, that wasn't who he was. He hadn't built a billion-dollar company by running away when things got hard. He'd built it by fighting for what mattered, by refusing to quit even when the odds were impossible. Cleo mattered more than any company, any amount of money, any doubt Hayes or anyone else could plant in his mind. He picked up his phone and typed a message. "Can we talk? Please. I need to see you." Across town, Cleo's phone buzzed with the incoming text. Her heart stopped when she saw his name, then started racing double time as she read the words. She should say no. Should protect herself. Should take more time to think about whether this was salvageable. But her fingers were already moving, typing a response before her brain could talk her out of it. "Tomorrow night. My place. After Arlo's asleep." Thatcher's reply came instantly. "I'll be there." Cleo set down her phone with shaking hands. This was it. Tomorrow they would either fix what was broken between them, or they would end it for good. The thought terrified her. But maybe Odessa was right. Maybe fear had been driving her decisions for so long that she'd forgotten how to choose hope instead. Tomorrow, she would choose. One way or another. And somehow, that felt like the bravest thing she'd done in years. Thatcher arrived at 7:30, 15 minutes early because he couldn't wait any longer. He stood outside Cleo's apartment door for a full minute, trying to calm his racing heart, trying to find the right words for what he needed to say. There were no right words. There was just truth, messy and imperfect and hopefully enough. He knocked. Cleo opened the door, and the sight of her hit him like a physical blow. She looked tired, thinner, her eyes shadowed with the same lack of sleep that had been plaguing him. But she was still the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." He stood there awkwardly, hands in his pockets, waiting for an invitation. "Come in." The apartment felt different somehow. Colder. Or maybe that was just the distance between them, the careful space they were both maintaining like they were strangers instead of lovers who'd shared everything just 2 weeks ago. They sat on the couch, the same couch where they'd kissed for the first time, where he'd told her he was falling for her, where she'd looked at him like he was something precious. Now they sat on opposite ends like there were miles between them instead of a few feet. "I don't know where to start," Thatcher admitted. "Start with the truth. That's all I want. Just honesty, even if it hurts." He took a breath. "Okay. The truth is that when Hayes said those things, for about 5 minutes, I wondered if he was right. Not because of anything you did. Not because you gave me any reason to doubt you. But because I've been hurt before, and that hurt taught me to protect myself even when protection means pushing away something real." Cleo's expression was carefully neutral, but he could see the pain flickering in her eyes. "But here's the other truth," he continued, leaning forward, needing her to hear this. "That 5 minutes of doubt? It was the worst 5 minutes I've had since my mother died. Because I realized in that moment that I was about to lose you. Not because you were using me, but because I was too damaged to fully trust something good when it finally showed up." "Thatcher. Let me finish. Please." He waited for her nod. "I've spent the last week miserable. Working myself to death again, trying not to think about you, about Arlo, about the life we were building together. And you know what I realized? I'm a coward. Hayes was right about that. Because instead of fighting for us, instead of proving to you that my love is bigger than my fear, I let you push me away. I gave you space when what I should have done was show up every single day and remind you why we work." Tears were sliding down Cleo's cheeks now. "And why do we work? Because from where I'm sitting, all I can see are the reasons we don't. The money, the different worlds, the fact that people will always assume I'm using you. How do we build something real on that foundation?" "We build it on truth," Thatcher said fiercely. "On the fact that I love you. Not because you need me, but because being with you makes me remember who I wanted to be before money and success turned me into someone who forgot how to feel. On the fact that Arlo makes me want to be a better man, the kind of man who shows up and keeps promises and teaches chess and tucks kids in at night." He moved closer, taking her hands in his. "On the fact that you're the strongest person I've ever met. And your strength has nothing to do with how much money you have, and everything to do with how you've survived and kept loving and kept trying even when life gave you every reason to quit." "People will talk," Cleo whispered. "Let them. They'll say I trapped you. I don't care. They'll never accept me in your world. Then we'll build our own world." His hands tightened on hers. "Cleo, I don't care about board meetings and business partners and what people think. I care about you. I care about Arlo. I care about having a reason to come home at night, about someone who calls me out when I'm being an idiot, about children's drawings on refrigerators and folded laundry and falling asleep next to someone who sees past the money to the man underneath." She was sobbing now, and Thatcher pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried out all the fear and pain and loneliness of the past week. "I'm scared," she said against his chest. "So am I. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe and alone. What if it doesn't work? What if the money always hangs between us? Then we'll deal with it. Together. That's what people who love each other do. They face the hard stuff together instead of running away." Cleo pulled back to look at him, her face wet with tears but her eyes finally showing something other than pain. Hope, maybe. Or at least the possibility of it. "I love you," she said. "I tried not to. I tried to protect myself. But I love you, Thatcher Langford, and it's terrifying and wonderful and I don't know how to do this but I want to try. That's all I need. You trying. Us trying together." He kissed her then, and it felt like coming home after a long journey. Her arms wrapped around his neck, his hands tangled in her hair, and for the first time in a week, Thatcher could breathe properly. When they broke apart, Cleo was smiling through her tears. "Arlo's going to be so happy you're back. He's been driving me crazy asking about you. I promised him I'd teach him the Queen's Gambit. I need to keep that promise. He'll hold you to it. Good. I want him to hold me to things. I want—" Thatcher paused, then decided to go all in. "I want to be part of his life, Cleo. Part of both your lives. Not as some temporary thing, not as the rich guy who helps out. As someone permanent. Someone who stays." "Are you?" Cleo's voice cracked. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying I want a future with you. With both of you. I'm saying that this week without you made me realize I don't want to waste any more time being careful or protecting myself or worrying about what everyone else thinks." He cupped her face in his hands. "I'm saying that I'm all in, Cleo Carter. Completely, terrifyingly, no going back, all in." She kissed him again, hard and desperate and full of promise. "I'm all in too," she whispered against his lips. "God help us both, I'm all in." They spent the rest of the night on that couch, talking through everything that had gone wrong, making promises about better communication, acknowledging fears while refusing to let those fears win. It wasn't perfect. They didn't solve every problem. But they faced them together, and that made all the difference. When Thatcher finally left around midnight, both of them agreeing he should leave before Arlo woke up so they could tell him together, properly, Cleo stood in her doorway watching him walk away. But this time, she knew he was coming back. This time, she believed. And belief, she was learning, was sometimes the bravest thing of all. Thank you so much for reading this far. I hope you're enjoying Cleo and Thatcher's love story. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what you think will happen next. Your engagement helps me bring you more beautiful love stories like this one. Part 9 coming soon. You won't want to miss what happens when everything comes crashing down before their ultimate happily ever after.